All right, so we will start to get underway here. So as you can see up on your screens, we always like to open with this bit, our corporate partners and our partners. They're the people who make this possible. Again, just a little kind of backtrack in terms of where we were 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, in fact. Today we were meant to be hosting an event at the British Motor Museum. Obviously, things changed for us quite significantly, and the entire world, if you like, a couple of days. So in a few days, we turned around a webinar, and it was extremely well received. And out of that has sprung our weekly Wednesday webinars, take place at 1:30. And really, it's just a real good chance for us to catch up as an industry, gain more insight, more perspectives. It's it can be a bit of a lonely world out there at the moment, as I'm sure we all know. So it's just really to gather as much information as we can and to share as much as we possibly know in terms of where we're at the moment. Again, big thank you to these guys for helping us along with everything that we do at ARC360. So again, before the webinars get underway, I just want everyone to make everyone aware and really show our appreciation for those who do offer up their time to come onto the panel and join the discussions. A little disclaimer that I like to put before these things. Again, you can see it if you're on screen. Audio wise, I'll just read it out. The views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributor and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. Just another little note there, please respect all contributions. We do encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions. As I say, things are moving extremely quickly with this, so we're just trying to keep pace, and we know full well, come a couple of hours time, things are likely to have changed even more. We are here to discuss the industry. There is obviously a much sort of wider piece at play here, and health and safety of everybody is the real key priority amongst all of this, and that is something that we always must bear in mind. So without further ado, we will introduce our panel for today, and we've taken a little bit of an international theme today as well. So we've got Ryan Mandel from Mitchell International joining us all the way from Seattle. We've got Michael Golden of LV joining us. We've got Chris Weeks of the NBRA joining us. And we have Dave Shepherd of Solera joining us. Hi guys, you all okay?
All good.
Fantastic. Now,
great.
What we'd like to do is open up these sessions, again, for those who haven't joined us, and for if there's any unfamiliar faces on the webinar. What I typically ask people is if you could just give us a little bit of an insight into your day-to-day role, as it was probably a couple of weeks ago, and then a little bit of an insight in terms of where you are this week with things and how, if you like, your life has changed in terms of your job role. Can I start with you, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. So my role here at Mitchell is Director of Performance Consulting for our insurance clients. So prior to the last couple of weeks, my primary purpose has been to work with all of our insurance carrier clients and to help them really just improve and optimize the use of our products, improve the efficiencies and profitabilities of their claims organization, and to help identify through the use of analytics any opportunities that they have for improvement. So that pretty much has changed significantly in the last couple of weeks, because really most carriers now have kind of moved away from this focus on how do we capitalize on these opportunities in our business, to how do we really just kind of create a new normal around what's going on around us. And clearly there's been some major transitions from the insurance industry in terms of how to manage their staff with reduced claims volumes, and also how to manage more of a virtual workforce in an industry that's very heavily reliant on a lot of in-person work.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Ryan. And Michael?
Yeah, I'm the Michael Golding, Network Manager for LV, looking after the various networks and aspects of the supply chain, supplied with motor repairs. I have a team of 10, of which 5 are field staff, and I've got 5 office-based staff in Ipswich. Sorry. Typical day involves a selection of different meetings around the UK and LV offices, but rarely one day is the same as the next, obviously, until now. Typical day for me at the moment, to be honest, Mark, is sitting at my desk at home and having various selection of phone calls, meetings, WebExes, and taking ad hoc calls, and I guess really trying to bring the claims function in conjunction with what's happening with the network itself, and trying to best do what we can to try and get over and support our customers, obviously, and our network as well. So yeah, it is a little bit same old every day, but you know, because it's changing all the time, different news, different things are happening all the time. So it's quite hard work at the moment.
I'm sure it certainly is for everyone concerned. And Dave.
Yeah, so my world has changed dramatically. So Dave Shepherd, Regional Managing Director for Solera, responsible for best part of EMEA. And typical week for me was 3 or 4 days a week in different countries. Probably took 3 or 4 flights a week as well. And of course, 2 weeks ago that stopped. And now my typical day is, you know, focusing on staying connected, make sure the team are safe, and trying to keep everybody focused, because, you know, we all have a critical role, not just to protect our own people, but, you know, making sure that the key workers and those that work on the NHS are actually able to stay on the road. So again, trying to connect or make sure that we continue to connect the insurers and the repair shops together, and getting used to being in my house, you know. So now rarely off of a Zoom or a Skype meeting, and just trying to put things in place really to ensure that we can keep everybody connected through this pandemic.
All right. Now, Chris, we've obviously spoken with you for the past couple of weeks, really, and you just mentioned in terms of it's just non-stop phone calls at the moment. So give us a little bit more of an insight into the MBRA at the moment.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, my day is traveling up to London, getting a coffee, getting in my office and looking after the repair. But it's been manic the last couple of weeks. You know, my starter, it never stops in terms of phone calls, webinars and Teams calls, because it's such a mess at the moment. Every single day seems to that we have to tackle, and yeah, it's really good. It's really exciting. But we've had so many sort of calls, emails from our 800 members, just seeking, trying to understand all of the jargon from the government at the moment, and to make that simple. Yeah, so.
Chris with his usual dodgy connection there.
Oh,
we keep losing you, Chris. You keep fading in and out.
Okay.
You have to get that hamster running faster in the wheel. All right. So we are obviously we've kind of, you know, got a little bit of an international sway on this with both Ryan and Dave. We are predominantly a UK centric audience. So let's take it from the UK before we start to cast our eyes any further. What's it looking like out there for yourself, Michael? If we go to you in the first instance, at the moment, from the insurer perspective, you know, how do things look this week?
There's varying degree of changes, ranging from body shop foreclosures to partial openings with receptions operating but having the workshop closed. We are having some groups that are closing a number of sites but operate with just maybe 1 or 2 sites and triaging vehicles to those relevant sites. Personally, I don't think there is a right or wrong decision at the moment being made in these circumstances, whether they open or close, and whether they sort of furlough staff. But either way, you know, we're having to support the relevant repairers now, and hoping to sort of through that recovery period, as there will no doubt be some, additional further challenges along the way. I've seen parts has created an issue with a number of vehicles struggling to be finished off and ready to be returned, and that has brought a number of limitations through along with obviously the impact of the claim frequency is now beginning to take its full toll. Obviously, challenges around mobility, part supply, staff, financial threats has really tightened its grip. Probably in the last few days, I would say, in the week. And I see it that we're beginning now to enter this new phase, if you like, this real bottom lull, which will become normal now for for a number of weeks, I suspect, until we start seeing that gradual recovery. So I think what overall we're beginning now to see is the sort of start of normal, if that makes sense. And there's still going to be some activity going along the way in the coming days and weeks, but I think we now got to prepare ourselves for this is going to be normal until such time.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And Dave, would you kind of the data that you guys are seeing and the numbers coming through the system, would that support what Michael's just said?
Yeah, it would. I'll talk about the UK now. Maybe we'll get into the international piece a bit later. But, this week we've seen a dramatic drop off. So we're now looking at, from our perspective, claims volumes are down about 70% for lots of reasons. Many businesses have already closed, therefore, and people are working from home. So less miles driven, less accidents. And we're also seeing, exactly as Michael said, really, that shops that are open, they're opening limited hours, limited numbers of shops amongst groups, and the parts supply now is really starting to bite. And of course, every business leader is making these tough decisions. How do you protect workforce or try and manage some sort of capacity, remain open or stay closed? And of course, all of this is really difficult because there's a lack of connected communication between all of the players in the industry. So we're finding that, as much as where people are open, people don't know they're open. So there's that whole struggle and that challenge that's going on, especially as so many main dealers decided to close, not just the showrooms, but they closed down their parts supply as well. So whilst the work is coming through at the moment, I think the shops are going to struggle to get it out the door.
Yeah. We'll whilst we're on the UK, I mean, what many of you will have seen earlier this week, we have teamed up, ARC360 have teamed up with Trend Tracker and the MBRA, and we posted a survey which is still live, but we've taken extracts from the results to date, and just wanted to reveal some very sort of headline numbers that we're seeing coming through. So temporary closures of body shops due to the pandemic, we're sort of not far off 50% now. Again, this is all very much UK, and you can see the figures there. OEM parts issues, and again, this was the big thing to arise out of last week's webinar. OEM parts were the major issue. I understand that there's been some perhaps progress developments made on that this week, but we'll touch upon those shortly. But that's obviously a huge impact on the industry. Accident notifications, and again, our data from body shops, from the surveys, nearly 50% down by 80% in terms of notifications or more at the moment. And again, it kind of aligns with obviously what Michael and David just said. Different measurements, different ways of measuring these things, obviously, but it's kind of a general area that we're in. And just a little one in terms of confidence on the industry. Again, perhaps this is one that we can kind of discuss as we go through today's webinar, but you can see there in terms of the confidence factor. And again, I'm sure this is more than likely changing by the day and as we go. Chris, any thoughts on those numbers that we've just sort of seen, and obviously the survey is highlighted for us? Does it sort of align with all you're hearing and feeling out there in the industry at the moment?
definitely. So as it says, 46% have closed already, and another 28% are due to be closing this week. So that's just under 3/4 of all the body shops. Okay. Why are they doing that? Well, if they open, they're looking at having 100% of their fixed costs absorbed by the gross profit from 20% of their normal volumes of work. It's almost impossible for them to do it. I'm amazed if anybody's managing to operate at a break even at the moment. Certainly not make a profit. Some groups have been able to consolidate their sites. So if you took a number of 10, leaving 2 open, putting all of the 2 sites, which could work for them, but then they're still going to observe all the social distancing and everything else like that. It's really difficult for body shops at the moment, and I think this is probably the biggest challenge that most of them are facing at the moment. Do I continue to trade through this? Is mine okay? Is it coming out okay at the moment, the connection?
Yeah, we can hear you okay at the moment. Just the odd word missing, but
yeah. So, I mean, there are definitely some things that happened in the last sort of week or so to help the body try and muddle their way through this. Some of the underwriters have put out a COVID charge of anywhere between 10 and £10. Some have taken away the parts discount that body shops provide. So, with £800 parts on a job, that could be the equivalent of £8. Some have improved rates and stuff like that, which I'm sure we'll come to. But all in all, none of them really have come up with anything more than about, £80 on a job. We've done some work at MBA to try and understand how much it would take for a body shop to keep going with 20% of their work volume and still break even. And I think that figure is more like around £400 per job. Is a big amount of money. And let's face it, this problem is an insurance problem. It's not their responsibility. They didn't create a virus, as far as we know. If they did, this is the biggest conspiracy theory ever. But I'm sure they didn't. But it's absolutely their fault. So there's only so much as an industry we can ask for at this moment. One of the things that we would ask for, I doubt, is cash flow for body shops is a massive issue at the moment, and there's a lot of money out there. This was a point raised by one of our exec members. There's a lot of money tied up at the moment, still outside of normal terms, that is not paid due to being a few pounds out here and there, not the right figure, etc., etc. I think, if I could ask for one thing today, it would be, if insurers, accident companies could absolutely clear the decks that's owed to repairers out there, paid, even if it means paying them short by whatever it is, £25, whatever the variance is, get that back out there, because body shops really, really need it at the moment.
Michael, I'll let you handle that one, shall I?
Yeah, absolutely. We're absolutely is correct. We've actually gone out to our network in the last week and we started requesting age debt. And it's quite interesting, as Chris sort of suggests, is that during the course of the average year, there's so many sort of cases that just fall to the side for whatever reason, even though we have that automated process. So we're doing exactly that. We are welcoming some repairers to send us anything that we're missing, and just to be able to do a tidy up. We're also adding resource to our finance team from our several areas, including my team is also heavily involved and working daily with the finance team to clear those down. So any repairers that are on part of the LV network that are experiencing problems, obviously are welcome to send the age debts through to us if you've not already been had that email from us. So it's obviously critical. It's just one of the small things that we should be doing anyway.
All right, now Ryan and Dave, what I want to do is just for a moment kind of scope out a little bit, if you like, and have a think about the wider implications. So sort of the global picture, if you like. We've seen the numbers that, you know, webinar one, we all agreed there wasn't really anything of major impact on the industry. That was, as I say, 2 weeks ago. Last week, all of a sudden, it was all about the parts supply. This week, we're now looking at notifications and volumes that they are. So if I come to you first, Ryan, in terms of Mitchell, the global brand, the global business, you know, what can we learn from what you guys have seen in other countries, and almost, you know, what are you guys learning from us in the UK as well?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting and probably an impact of this that we didn't necessarily predict coming was when not only the parts issue, which I think was a natural expectation, but we've also seen disruption on the service side from dealerships with these newer vehicles and all the ADAS functionalities that we're seeing. There's dealership service bays are closing, and these specialized calibrations that need to take place after repair's been done are holding up jobs, so that complete repair might be done, you know, 99% of the way, and all that's left is a calibration, but that can't take place because it might be required to go to a dealership, or a shop just might not have the equipment to do any sort of calibration. So it's tough right now to say, you know, invest in calibration equipment. You know, it's not really a time when people are thinking about investing, but for those shops that have the capability to undertake the advanced electronic components of the vehicle and do these kind of calibrations in-house, you know, I think what we're seeing is that there's some shops that are actually forming partnerships with one another, you know, that aren't within a network together. So, you know, separate individual shops are forming partnerships with one another to be able to complete some of these tasks that normally they wouldn't be doing. And they're essentially subletting to their competitors. But it's a way that they're able to actually get some of these jobs out without having to wait, you know, potentially several months for dealerships to reopen. So I think it's really encouraging to us to see this spirit of collaboration that's taking place, and, you know, really people inside the industry here that are coming together to help one another out, because it is such a trying time right now.
And in terms of the volumes and the claims and the notifications that we've seen in the UK, are we going to go lower from what your data's telling you from around the world, or are we kind of at that point now where it's as Michael already referenced, perhaps it's going to steady off at the point?
No, I think we actually have. I think there's still some runway actually for us to see lower volumes. In the U.S., we've only seen, and in Canada as well, only about 30% reduction so far in the last several weeks. But in our businesses in Spain and Italy, that's gone down about 65 to 70%. And we expect that that's actually going to continue to trend down lower, and probably will cap out at about 80 to 85% in reduction year over year. And if we look and forecast out for the entire year of 2020, we expect that we'll see an overall volume decrease of about probably 20 to 25%.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, you again from a sort of a bigger picture, global perspective, your figures would align with that. Your thoughts and sentiments the same?
Yeah, all we're seeing really is the impact at different stages as the countries go into more severe lockdown. Obviously, we looked at China first because that was the first market, but they were very slow actually to react and before they locked down. But when they locked down, it was total. So we saw volumes there, you know, they dropped 100% for a number of weeks. There was nothing. Then when we, you know, if we look now what happened in Italy, and they looked at Spain, which has now been in lockdown for, you know, 2.5 weeks, we're seeing there about 75-80% down, because there is still some movement. People have to move around. So in the UK, I think it depends the next step that the government take. If we remain where we are with what I'm going to call a partial lockdown rather than a totalitarian lockdown like they did in China, then I think the sort of 70-80% reduction is where we'll be for a number of weeks. The climb back out of that is a little bit harder to predict, because when we look at China, we see pockets where, so in certain major cities, we're seeing the volume coming back to what I would call near normal, but then it stops. You'll have a day when kind of nothing happens, and you wonder, it's not a weekend, you wonder what actually drove that. So we're seeing it trending up. But also in China, although certain cities are open, the travel between cities is severely restricted. So you move from one city to the next, you have to go into a 14-day quarantine. So people are not doing that. So, I think to Ryan's point, really, we're bound to see across the year an impact in the region of 20 to 25% on what we would call a typical year. So this is on for a long while. And from a repair shop, most of you know that that's my background for many years. Most shops, their break even is close to 90%. So if you start taking 20 to 25% off the top end, these shops are going to really struggle to make a profit or even break even for the rest of this year.
Yeah. Now it's
and Mark, if I could jump in also, I think what's really interesting is what we've been talking to a lot of folks in the Canadian market and the U.S. market, obviously, and what we actually are seeing is that there's some shops that are looking at this and saying, if we just need to get through 2020, and they're really in survival mode for the rest of this year. But what they're actually seeing is that they really feel very optimistic about 2021 and forward coming out of this crisis. And the main reason for that is there's a lot of folks in the industry that are thinking that we're actually going to see a massive increase in claims volume once we kind of come out to the light at the end of the tunnel, because we're going to see that people aren't going to be as prone to be taking mass transit, public transportation as much, because of just this lingering fear of exposure to any sort, whether it's coronavirus or any other virus. And so that potential trend could lead to an actual increase in claims volume as we see more people actually driving and being more isolated in their commutes and opting for potentially vehicle travel for vacations as opposed to getting on an airplane. Especially, if budgets are constrained and people are still, kind of recovering financially from this crisis. So I think there's a real opportunity for the industry, once kind of this mode of survival is through, that there could be a real opportunity to thrive in the near future.
And I think that's very true. And I think it's it's something we've kind of spoken about in previous weeks. We kind of know where we're going. And we know that's going to bottom out and be there for a period of time. But it's then how quick is that recovery? Will we ever go back to what we know as the norm now? Will society have changed significantly in terms of what we're doing here today and stuff? So there are a lot of question marks around that. But absolutely right. Inevitably, I would imagine there's going to be a great influx where people kind of want to get out of the door. It's almost a right, let's go again. In terms of that, there was some, harsh headlines in the UK today. Research papers, 1 in 5, so 20% SMEs unlikely to make it through to sort of the government funding when that becomes available. And again, that's all tied in with cash flow, Chris. What's your kind of, take on that, or what's the sort of, view of the MBRA and the opinion there?
So this is size, because bottom to mouth, they don't have a lot of cash floating around. They really don't. So a lot of them are through this moral dilemma at the moment, which is, you know, do we try it on? A lot of businesses that probably could have stayed open have made the decision to try and help the government and close their business to, you know, reduce the impact of this virus on the population. You know, I've named a few that have fallen into that category. But, you know, for all of them, they're really going to struggle to see this through. You know, if you're staying open, you're going to struggle to see through because you're going to be operating costs. If you've closed the doors and you've lowered your staff, you know, you're probably still dealing with 20% of your fixed costs per month that you have to struggle through. If this goes on for 6 months, sort of this moment, I think the impact on our industry, actually, you know, 20-30% of body shops to shut. They might have to shut and, you know, go bust and open the right way to do things necessarily. You know, some might be forced to do something like that. Just as an interesting thought, you know, I mentioned £100 to keep business running at the moment, you know, for every job. Come out of this, you know, there will be a similar number of claims there, I'd imagine. Probably less because more workers and stuff, but reasonably similar. You know, if we want all the body shops to be there on the other, we need to think about doing something. I've considered writing to the government for a full aid package for a bit like the air. You know, the FCA is saying they want strong service and support to customers. You know, that financial institutions like the insurers. I've calculated that if this is a £8 billion claims industry per year on motor claims, 8 billion is spent on it. If you look at the next 5 months, you average out, you know, at 50% of claims. I know it will be less than that at times, but over an average, that a £1.5 billion windfall. Just to put it into context, £400 per claim on top of normal charges to keep body shops afloat would cost 219 million. Right, as a 1.5 billion. So, as I said earlier, it's no, you know, but we could think about doing some different things here and ensuring that, you know, this industry is there fit well and in good shape on the other side of it.
Chris, you keep cutting in and out, but I get the gist about absolutely what you're saying. And Michael, perhaps we'll come to you on that. And you know, as we work our way through this, so first and foremost, we are where we are. We're going through this kind of lull. You can't all of a sudden flick a switch and say everything's okay. We fully appreciate that. But you know, are you now? Do you, as a business, do insurers? Do you think, on the whole, and it's very difficult to speak for all, obviously. But are you starting to picture a different model, different ways of working? Is this a thought process currently, or is it all just hands on deck at the moment?
At the moment, I'll be honest, it is all hands on decks. Our first and foremost, obviously, we want to try and support our network and those people that are there already for us. So we obviously can't and we won't abandon those. But we are looking at what that future is going to look like. I think it's fair to say the landscape is going to change. Some of the number of sort of the smaller independent family-run businesses, I agree, they are going to have that struggle. Some of them are going to close, whether it's mothballing the site, furlough the staff and coming back again. And I think some of the other groups are going to come back. I do sort of echo the thoughts that this is also look at this as an opportunity. to perhaps plan for the future and look at the models, and because claims will return, obviously the frequency will come back at some time. And it just gives us that time to almost stop and think about, okay, how do we do things different? And that's not just repairers, that's the whole supply chain, including insurers as well. And I think, if anything, it probably starts to create a greater respect for all of us, to be honest, and the partnerships that we have in place. And I think that's really going to be important, because I think some of the strength of those relationships will see us through over these sort of coming weeks. And I think that, I hope, will be able to be maintained in place within the industry as we sort of get out the back of this, especially through the recovery, because I think the recovery period, however long that is, I think that will also require a lot of time, especially as Chris was mentioning about financial support. That should be going on now, but also even more so at the as we're coming out of this. And I think, to echo Dave's point, I think if anyone is able to break even this year, I think they've done well. Unfortunately, there is going to be casualties. To what degree at this moment, it's hard to calculate.
Yeah. Do you coming back to yourself, Ryan, and again, sort of looking at it from outside of the UK, do you have any sort of data or evidence to say how long this takes to come out of, or on what the sort of collateral damage is to the industry as such?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit more difficult to predict, Mark, but I think we definitely see that the long-term impacts, definitely going through, kind of bleeding over into next year for sure. This is a pretty cataclysmic event for not just the industry, but the entire world. So I think we're going to see some pretty, there's going to be some knock-on effects that are going to stay with us for some time. Michael, I think, you mentioned the changes in the ways that we work together. I think that's going to be something that is going to be permanently changed by what's going on right now. We're already seeing in the United States that some, the insurance carriers have gone to 100% virtual estimating. So essentially estimating from photos and videos, and doing away with in-person inspections. And several insurers have mentioned to us that even after the pandemic resides and everything kind of starts to get back to quote unquote a new normal, they plan to stick with that strategy and just adopt it fully moving forward, because they've seen the efficiencies in pilot programs, but now they're really seeing how it can benefit when any events like this do take place, whether it's a pandemic or any other crisis like a natural disaster. They're seeing that virtualizing the process and adding this remote workforce is something that can really add quite a bit of efficiency to their system. So I think that's going to be something that we see as a lasting change in the industry.
Yeah. And I do think it's, again, very, very true that, and having many conversations over the past week, as I'm sure we all have, but this has almost been an accelerator in terms of many forms of business. We've had a lot of technology, this being a prime example, kind of sat there. We utilize it to a degree, but all of a sudden, we've been thrust into this world where we really need to utilize it. And you know what? It so far works pretty well. And I think that's going to be a realization, I suppose, amongst much of what we do as an industry, is reassessing, and I don't just mean our industry, but the business world in general, reassessing how we do things, and if we can do more things more efficiently. And again, Dave, I'd come to you with that same point. Is there kind of evidence that you are seeing in terms of changes in behavior that's coming out of this in those countries that are perhaps more, I use the term advanced, that's probably the wrong term to use, but further into this?
Yeah. And again, different countries and different insurers, different insurance carriers work differently. In the UK, we have quite a lot of remote engineering. It's been the norm for quite a long while, but in some of mainland Europe, they still send a physical person to go and look at every vehicle. Well, they can't anymore. So, we've seen in the last weeks a real push for, if you like, image capture, any form of photo at the front end that can either then be sent to somebody remotely to carry out the inspection. We see a lot more insurers in certain parts of the world saying, I'm just going to send you cash. So, you know, there's $1,500 to take, repair your car when you want, don't repair it, because they're trying to settle and make things whole for the policyholder. So yes, I think there'll be some significant changes, certainly in some of the markets where, you know, and it's normally where labour is cheap, that they can afford to kind of send a person in a car to go and look at another damaged vehicle. That's definitely going to change, and that will change forever. I think we'll see some of that in the UK as well, because if you look now, you know, which shops are open. So we need to learn to be a little bit more dynamic in where we send work. That can be automated today. I mean, you've only got to look at some of the apps that are out there with the likes of Uber, you know, and Deliveroo and all those things. There's a lot of clever technology out there that we haven't really used in our supply chain. And I think we can, I think we should. So we'll see that as it must happen. But also, I'm pretty impressed with the fact that so many people are able to work from home. And so when we think about, you know, some of our big offices around the world, not just in our world, but generally speaking, I think a lot of CEOs and probably more the CFOs are going to be asking, do we need those big offices? Can we get more of our workforce to work from home? And I think that will also change. That will be one of the seismic changes, not just in our industry, but it will change because people may drive less. And I really pick up on the point that Ryan said, we feel the same, that people would rather sit in their car going forward. So, you know, like Ryan, and probably not like the insurers, but we're hoping that, you know, people do drive more for the inevitable reason. But I do think more and more people will work from home, and I think that will change the work-life balance.
Yep. Yeah, completely agree with that. We've got a lot of questions. I'm trying to, as we go, filter through them. So we'll keep the conversation flowing, and we'll sort of spend the last 5 minutes or so on those questions. But
a quick one to Dave.
Yes, of course you can.
You know, the inevitable question. You know, out of text, like so many other things, is a reasonably areas at the moment. Are you going to be looking at any measures to perhaps help in the short term?
Yeah, short answer, Chris, absolutely. Slightly longer answer is that, you know, as much as everybody that, you know, all our customers, you know, the repairers are impacted by loss of volume, so are we. And, you know, we're impacted across the globe, but like everybody else, we're not quite sure how long and how deep this will be. So we need to do something that is thoughtful, and it won't be one size fits all. You know, different repairers will have different requirements, and we'll do whatever we can to help and support our customers, because they've been our customers for a long while. We want them to continue to be our customers as we come out of this. And I think somebody mentioned the fact that, I think it might have been Michael, but when we come out of this, it won't be like turning the switch back on. You know, if anyone's ever lived through a recession, and unfortunately I've lived through two, as you come out of that, that's when you're more likely to run out of cash, because effectively you're trying to trade and you haven't got enough money behind you. So I think what we're trying to do is, you know, there's no one big bold gesture that we can do, but there's a series of things that we can do now as this pandemic, you know, I suppose really takes a grip. But then also we want to be there so that we can try and help and support the industry as we come out of this. So we're working on a number of initiatives right now. I spoke with Mark earlier this morning. You know, I was on until midnight with my US colleagues, and back on the phone this morning at 5 a.m. because we're wrestling with this problem around the world. But we will be working with repairers to help them through, and we're also trying to work with the insurers to, is there something we can do there, maybe to change, let's take out of invoice, for example. Could we do the out of invoice at the point of approved estimate rather than wait until the repair's done? Is that a way of freeing up? So there's a bunch of things that we're working on right now, which we'll be talking about over the next weeks. I was hoping to have had it all done by today, but I think the speed that we've seen things materialise at, you know, we could have made a major mistake and offered something bold that we then wouldn't be able to support. So again, it will take us a few days, but we will be doing some things to support, and, you know, happy to talk to repairers on a one-on-one basis or through yourself, Chris.
I think that's you know, a key points from Chris and Dave there, that the industry is trying to help each other out here. You know, we kind of, you know, Michael, we posed some questions to you, and Chris knows it only too well, but we know as an insurer, you're getting it from every angle as well. You know, motor just being one side of your business. You know, there's so many market forces out there impacting on your business. Ryan, the same with Mitchell, Dave, the same with Outertech. So, you know, no business is immune to this. And I think we all, you know, really kind of appreciate that we are all muddling our way through this at the current time. Nobody's got the right or wrong answer, I think it's fair to say. And, you know, it is just a case of, you cannot make bold decisions, as Dave says, because the repercussions of that, you know, could be enormous. So we just have to be very mindful that, although the frustration is that perhaps these things are taking time, and the smaller businesses at the end of the supply chain are perhaps feeling the pinch a little bit more, it is almost it's just a time thing to get the wheels in motion to make sure we get these things properly done, and for the right reasons. And we've spoken about it before, you know, unintended consequences of anything that we do now as we start to come out of this. You know, we've got to be very mindful that you know, we're still able to do and offer what we can at the moment, maybe completely differently in how we do it. But if we just sort of start to round up this little bit, and I'll just come to each of you. Ryan, if we come to you first, what would you kind of, you know, to a business, to a body shop, to any business in our sector right now, you know, what would be a key focus for you right now? Where should we be investing our energies?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, kind of as I mentioned earlier, I think the collaboration aspect is really critical right now, because I think, you know, we're all realizing that we're in this together. And so the more I think we can collaborate with each other in the industry, I think that's going to create some synergies that will allow more people to be as successful as possible. I would also recommend that this is a great time, as difficult as it may seem, to start thinking about the future and reimagining your business. There's a great article that was put out by McKinsey on the business impact of COVID-19. And there's some really just, you know, some good philosophical and practical advice in there for thinking about your business, resolving the issues right now and getting through the crisis, but then coming out of it better and stronger. And, you know, I think we are going to get through this. You know, this will end. And, you know, the thought is to be able to emerge from this as a business that is ready to be as successful as possible. So I would definitely concentrate on, you know, trying to build as many strategies and contingency plans as possible for when we do, you know, when this pandemic does recede, and we're on the other side and ready to get back into action.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ryan. Michael, I'll come to you with the same point in terms of your network and those body shops that you do deal with, perhaps outside of the network as well.
Yeah, the only thing we can to look at its business and try and focus on other non-virus activities where they need to, maybe switching off from the constant feed of news and social media activity, because that can obviously be draining. But I think that gives us a chance to look at a number of areas where we don't usually get the chance to. I know that's something we're certainly trying to do, trying to get a bit of BAU in, but, you know, not specifically related to the virus, even if it's just for 1 to 2 hours a day, and prepare for the future, which I again appreciate can be difficult, but understand if it needs to adapt to this new landscape, because it is going to be different. I think spending time, putting some focus on, you know, staff and the people aspect, I think is going to be very, very important, because, you know, this is more than just bent metal. This is, you know, people's lives and families that are taking its real toll. So I think things like that should really be a key focus. And if I may, Mark, I just want to sort of just give some real good recognition to some, not just our repairers on the network, but some other people there we've seen is where they've been giving out some things like the PPE equipment to NHS workers. I've seen courtesy cars, and I've seen some individual cases where people have gone sort of way above and beyond. And I think they are repairers that are also facing that financial, you know, restraints, and they're still giving so much. And I think that's great recognition of our industry and the type of characters we have.
Yep, absolutely agree. Absolutely agreed. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff going on out there in terms of our industry pulling together, finding innovative ways of doing things. So as you say, yeah, full credit to those businesses. Dave, same question to you. Kind of, you know, where would your sights be set? Perhaps cast your mind back to when you were in the shop.
Yeah, it's amazing as well, because, you know, when I ran the shop, you know, every year you would look and say, you know, how do we improve our profit? You'd look at some stuff and find 2 or 3 things and be happy because you put a tick in the box and maybe earn another 1 or 2%. And you know, what's frustrating is when you look back, if we'd have done something, I'll say drastic, but if we'd have taken, not been satisfied with 1 or 2%, we probably could have a whole different way of working in our business. And, you know, I've mentioned before, there's a lot of technology out there, not just Aldertex and Solera technology, but there's technology out there that I don't think as an industry we use very well. I think we should take this opportunity. We're certainly encouraging our guys and girls to, you know, do stuff like LinkedIn Learning, not even around what we do day to day, but to get a broader understanding of what's going on in other businesses, and use some of our younger people again, you know, that can come back in with crazy ideas that we can then help maybe direct them, you know, from the real crazy ideas to actually something that we could actually put into the business and make a difference. You know, yeah. We spoke earlier about, you know, Ryan mentioned, you know, people in the US saying, well, actually, I'm never going to put an appraiser back on the road again, for example. A whole bunch of stuff like that we should look at in our industry. You know, think about the way we order parts, usually on a telephone. Really? Today? Do we really think that's an efficient way of doing it? You know, having vehicles on site for 10, 11 days, you know, average repair, 17, 18 hours. I think we should take this time now as an industry. We're certainly looking at all of these things to say, what could we do that's different? You know, how could you get that 18-hour, 20-hour job through your shop in 3 days and not 10? Because that's a massive change in what we do. And that means that we've got to have a connected supply chain. Yeah? So, you know, I think between us as an industry, the insurance industry, OEMs, dealer groups, Aldertex, Solera, parts providers, you know, it's time for us to maybe get around the table and say, how do we change for the better?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, again, that was kind of a point raised last week when we spoke, and as ARC360, you know, we would quite happily facilitate a roundtable discussion just to throw ideas around. And I think we're almost at that point in the industry where it is kind of, you know, no holds barred. You just, you know, put ideas out there, discuss them through. Hey, you know what? If something springs from it, great. If not, then everyone walks away. Kind of, it's fair enough. But at least you can say you've put the ideas out there. So, yeah, if anyone wants to be involved in that, please just drop us a line after this. Chris, from your perspective, at a sort of, you know, grassroots body shop level, where should they be, you know, casting their attentions, directing their energies right now?
I think now it's all about. I think, you know, the focus will be the other side of, you know, body shops need to be developed. They can, you know, come out of hibernation and take advantage of the new world. Just following on from Dave, necessity does, it's the mother of invention, I think they say, isn't it? And we are all working differently straight, and there's so many good ideas coming out. I've noticed in the events of different ways of pay repairers, buying credit cards into machines, I think it's claims technology, and various other things. But for me, the best part of this has been the way this industry is pulled together. It's been absolutely amazing, and Watts has been a brilliant example of that. This 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago actually, and everyone was saying that we're all going to have to stop. We can't get bits and parts because, and literally everyone, ABP, OED, Chris and there have pulled together solutions. Advantage Park with Darren, have been helping, we've been helping, and Dave Dixon, Nat Oliver, and Hart. So many people have pulled together to try and resolve that problem, and I just think it's fantastic the way this industry pulled together and find some answers. So yeah, I'm still positive about the future. I just think people need to keep sort of focused on survival.
Yeah. All right, great stuff. We are drawing to a rapid close. Again, I think we've got through most of the points and questions in a roundabout way that were posed. Just a couple of points. So somebody highlighting, John Payne highlighting a business has been asked to close by the local council today, even though they're providing a service to key workers. So that's an interesting one. Is that a sign of things to come? Just a point there, paint companies now closed here and have forced us to close, even though they do, again, key workers vehicles or NHS vehicles. So again, these are just points that we're picking up as they come through. Data survey, yes, the data finishes on Friday, so we'll have all the results then, and that will be over to Trend Tracker, Mark Bull, and ourselves, Chris and myself, so that will be distributed so we can have full sight of that. If you've not yet filled it in, again, look out for Mark's LinkedIn messages. We'll go there. Michael, just one question for you. A little bit talk about age debt, non-approved repairers. Is that something that you're looking at as well?
Yeah, that will come in with the same sort of focus with the additional staff we're adding on. So absolutely, we look at it overall.
Okay, fantastic. And then, various other points that we've come across. Again, they're probably points that we can raise around a roundtable discussion and or carry over to next week. Fabulous stuff. What can I say? Great stuff. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much, Ryan. It's all of 6:30 in the morning there now?
Yep, we're just ready to start the day.
Be out for your morning jog very shortly, I know.
Absolutely.
So really, really do appreciate all the insights and all the input, guys. It's been fantastic. I know the attendees really appreciate it as well. It's a great job you standing up there and giving your opinions. And again, this is moving extremely quickly. Next week, we'll be back 1:30 Wednesday. Different panelists, probably talking about completely different things as this whole thing moves on rapidly. But great stuff. Thank you very much for your time today, everybody, and we'll catch up with you again next week. Keep safe, keep well. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Bye.